Good evening, Danvers, and welcome to the second night of the annual town meeting warrant review. And Maureen, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
Yes, I will. Thank you. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Before we start, a little housekeeping. The FinCom budget and warrant hearing schedule, I would ask that Gardner represent the board on Tuesday, the 11th, David on Wednesday, the 12th, Maureen on Thursday, the 13th. I'll do Monday, the 24th, and Wednesday, the 26th, and Gardner, if needed, Thursday, the 27th. That'd be at 7 o'clock in this room.
Thank you.
Thank you. And before we start, tonight we'll listen to all the presentations and take one vote at the end if needed. So we can listen, ask questions, and at the end, if there's something you want to pull out and vote on separately, we can do that, but otherwise, we'll take one vote at the end of the evening. Mr. Town Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We are joined tonight by quite a few members of staff who have played a role in developing the projects that we're going to talk about tonight. Rather than introducing them all right now, as they have an opportunity to speak tonight, we can introduce them, but the audience tonight is predominantly staff, so you probably won't get too many hardball questions or heckling from that group. Bill Bradstreet may be another story altogether, but if you'd like to dive right in, and literally dive right in, the very first article tonight is on the special town meeting warrant, and that is a recommendation to use free cash to purchase trash and recycling bins.
Please refer to the number.
Sorry, special town meeting article number 5.
Thank you.
And I would invite DPW Director David Lane to the microphone. So this is part of the broader discussion we started having back in the fall when we were looking ahead at our trash and recycling and transfer station contracts that were expiring at the end of the year. We renegotiated the transfer station agreement with Covanta for 5 years, and the board adopted as a goal for the upcoming year, doing a deep dive into what the long-term management of that facility might look like if the town were to explore taking it on versus going through another competitive bid process. And I did send a note out to the board. We did complete several months of procurement for the trash contract for the upcoming fiscal year. So when we approved the budget on March 18th, we had an estimate in the budget for what the trash and recycling collection contracts are going to look like. David Lane and Rob Dever in particular did a tremendous job managing that process this spring, and we were able to negotiate, after receiving bids from 4 regional vendors, a contract extension with Republic, who purchased JRM last year. They had the lowest price and also the least disruptive proposal in terms of service. And I feel badly having invited David up. I'm now giving the summary I was going to ask him to give, but part of the transition is the article here, and I would turn it over to the Public Works Director to continue.
Thanks, Steve. I'm David Lane, the Public Works Director, and there are a couple key points that we could talk about. When we started this process, we went out and canvassed all the towns in our area to find out what they were doing for refuse and recycling collection, what was working, what was not. We actually got a lot of information from the state DEP also on what they were using across the state. We then met with a number of haulers before issuing our RFP and found that, I've mentioned to the board before, the industry and the collection crews are going to automated collection. They are getting away from having employees on the back of the truck that are jumping off and throwing barrels around, and going to an automatic collection vehicle with an arm that drives up the street, picks up your barrel at each home, and dumps it into the truck itself. It actually has a camera on the truck. It watches what's falling out of the barrel, and it's getting a lot more high-tech than our previous collection services. In order to do that automated collection, we need to have standard barrels, which are similar to the ones right here to my right. The industry standard out there is to use a large 95-gallon bin like this for recycling. And next door to it, the smaller one, is a 64-gallon bin for refuse. And what we need to do in order to put this program in place is to supply one of these bins, or one of each of these bins, to each resident in town. We looked at different ways that towns bought those and found that the most economical way was for the town to buy these up front. And then we put the maintenance cost of these into our contracts. The contractors have individuals that replace the parts and pieces, wheels, and it will be the contractor's responsibility to replace parts and pieces to keep them in good shape. If a bin gets destroyed or it's at its end of its useful life, we will have to replace that bin, and we'll have a stock of those that happens. If something tragic happened to the bin, or if it just wore out, we'd have to replace those. We are finding that towns are getting 15 years out of these bins on average. We were very surprised to hear that. We were at first thinking 10, and the more we dug into it, found out that we can look at a life expectancy of 15 years on these bins with good maintenance on them. So our proposal is to use free cash, money up front, to buy these bins, and then with a life expectancy of approximately 15 years. We did look at having the contractor buy them part of the contract, leasing them, all different other financial arrangements, and this is the one that we thought was best, most economical for the town.
That's it?
That's it for, unless you want me to get into the whole program. That's
Well,
about the bins.
a couple of questions on bins.
Sure.
Thank you. The contractor's going to repair the bins, be responsible for that?
That's correct.
What are they going to do, fix them on the sidewalk?
Yes, they have another employee with a truck with parts and pieces in it, and it will get reported back either by one of our staff or by the driver of the truck that a bin at such and such address they all have numbers on the side, they'll know which bin it is, and they'll go around behind the collection truck and replace the pieces.
Okay,
Right
thank
on
you.
the side of the street.
And what happens to the old bins that we have?
So the old bins, what we're working with staff on, trying to find, encouraging people to find other uses for their bins, and we believe we're going to have a collection drop-off. If people want to get rid of their old bins, we'll have a collection drop-off where people can drop off their old bins for disposal.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, hi, Dave. I just have a question. You said that the town will supply one per family. What if, one per family for a family of 2 or a family of 4? What if you have a family of 7, 8, 9? Would they supply 2?
So thank you for that. We're going to have in the program, and I don't have the costs identified yet. Now that we just did our contract, I can do those costs. We're going to have the option for a resident to buy an additional bin. And obviously that bin would cost the town because we have to dispose of not only the collection, it costs more to collect it, and we have to pay for the refuse inside. So we're going to come up with a fee for residents to buy a second bin if you want to have a second one.
Couldn't we put something in place where a family of X amount would get an additional bin? You got a family of 2 or 3, and then I think the town should be at least to give large families 2 at no cost.
We can look into that and
I
talk
think we
about it.
should,
The other
yeah.
towns that I've talked to have had a hard time nailing that down. Where is the cutoff and what family gets one and what doesn't?
Yeah, but you
And
just put a number, over a certain amount, they should be allowed to get 2.
yeah, it's,
It doesn't seem like that's very fair, naturally, they're gonna have a lot more trash, and they have a lot more expense with bigger families, and as we know, families are combining now, into houses. Dan will tell you that with the real estate, so I think it would be nice if the town could set a number, maybe for large families or extended families, to get 2 bins.
I think as David said, we can look at that. What we have found more is that it's really a volume-based program. I'm not going to pick on a particular employee in the room who indicated that he and I have the same size families, and it sounds like he produces twice as much trash as I do. So being a family of 2 versus 4 versus 6 isn't always going to correlate to the volume of trash that's produced. But I think it's something that as we're transitioning from the manual process to the automated process, we have to think about.
Yeah,
It's a
that
fair
would be
point.
great if we could look at that, Dave.
sure, we'll look at that. And I did, Mr. Chairman, wanted to mention before we get to more questions is that in order to get a program that fit the budget and was economical for the town, we did need to change the recycling to go every other week recycling collection. And we collect half the town on for the 1 week, and then the other half of the town would be collected the other week. And that saved hundreds of thousands of dollars off the cost, and we found that it's working in other towns of our similar size, and people are able to fit their recycling in this bin. They have to crunch up the cardboard, and we'll have a second drop-off for cardboard also, if people want that, if they have a lot of boxes. But it was a way to save a lot of money for the town, and it's working elsewhere.
And I had another question about the yard waste. I know that was staying the same too, was in the notes.
Yes.
I do read the stuff.
We were very happy that we were able to keep it the
Which is
same.
good. However, you know, I drive around town a lot, and I do see some people that have a lot of yard waste. So maybe we restrict something like that where we balance, you know, the barrels with the yard waste.
So I
somehow.
thought we were gonna have to do that, and right now, we were able to close the contract with the program as is. So,
But I think to Maureen's point, we have issues now where residents should be contacting DPW if they believe, for example, if you believe a contractor is
Oh.
using your neighbor's front yard to drop off bags like that, we deal with that in the current agreement, we would deal with that the same
yeah,
way.
we need to police the commercial, absolutely, I agree. Thank you, Steve.
And just, my presumption is that the landfill will remain open for anybody who wants to bring up their own yard waste, their own recyclables and things of that nature.
That's
So,
correct.
a couple of days after Christmas, when I've got 1 million boxes because I've got a new grandchild, I can package them up. If I don't want to wait 2 weeks, I can throw them in my truck and run them up there, and it doesn't cost anything. I don't have to wear a helmet or a vest on the recycle end of that.
Correct.
Or if I'm doing yard waste and I don't want to wait 2 weeks for it to, before the next scheduled pickup, I can always run it into the disposal area anyhow.
Yep.
Are the barrels considered town of Danvers property? I mean, for example, if the meters, the towns, other things that are afforded to me, other towns so if I move, I wouldn't take these with me.
Yeah, part of our program, correct. We are gonna be asking residents and realtors to promote it, to try to leave your barrel behind. It's part of the town of Danvers, yes.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anyone on this end? Matt?
Welcome, Mr. Lane.
Thank you.
A follow-up to Ms. Bernard's question about the volumes. So I think other towns, one bin, but if they have overflow, they can purchase plastic bags to supplement that. Is that something you've considered?
Yeah, we did. And I put the proposal out the first way with overflow bags. And every contract that proposed was dead set against it. It cost them a lot, and they all said, if we want to get the best pricing, we need to go with offering a second bin, so they're not having to jump out of the truck and do it with an employee. We tried it, just was recommended
Yeah,
against it.
I see a problem with that, because I think I heard that there's families that, and I have families in my neighborhood, they generate a lot of trash.
Yep.
And what's going to happen with that if they're restricted to only one barrel? Are they going to be doing what you mentioned, dumping it in someone else's barrel, or what do you anticipate for that?
So we were really worried about that 8 years ago when we went from 5 barrels to 3. We thought that was going to happen, and it didn't. People were able to consolidate their trash or take it to the transfer station. We didn't see any increase in illegal dumping. We're going to have to keep a sharp lookout for that and just really work with people to try to consolidate their refuse and make it fit in this barrel. And it's fitting in other towns. It's becoming the standard. We also went through what our average per household weight is here in Danvers, and we're already at or lower than the weight per week the towns are that are using these bins. So if we did the numbers, and it should work.
Okay. And then to the durability, you said 15 years. I hope that's true, because the blue recycling bin I have now is they only last a year or two, it seems, because they're tossed around. So I assume these are much more heavy-duty construction.
So they're heavier duty, and what I've heard is they don't blow around in the wind as much, and we also won't have someone trying to throw it across the road or throw it to the curb or something. The truck's just gonna place it down. So those two things play a factor, in addition to them being rugged.
And the placement of them is out at the curb so that this arm can easily get a hold of them, right? Because you can't leave them too far from the curb, right? Like up on a
Correct.
sidewalk or something, so.
And there are some small roads or small dead-end streets where the truck may have to back in, and we may have to ask the people to, everyone put it on one side of the street, because the truck's only gonna be able to pick up on one side of
I
the street.
see, okay.
So we're gonna be working out those route details with our hauler now that we've selected one.
And you talked about the ownership. These are serial numbers, right? So each bin has a unique serial number, and that's assigned to the homeowner?
Yes, it is. Yep.
Okay. All right. I think that's all I have.
Thank you.
I'm glad that we're kind of getting with the kind of the flow that other towns like Salem have been doing this for a number of years, so I think it's beneficial, standardizes the operation.
Yes, it does.
And one last thing that I think about, so no bags at all, because I know people like to use black contractor's bag. They hold a litany of evils, right? So you can put anything in a black contractor's bag. Is that, how will that be managed? You mentioned a camera, monitoring what's coming out of it.
So there's when the arm picks it up and it gets it to a point in its arc where the lid opens up, right there is the camera shines into and the driver can look at what's in there. And if the driver, he can see what's in there, and he can also see down in the hopper. He sees both ways. Some cases he can see stuff that's in the bin that's not acceptable and put the bin back down and report it in. Other times he can see it in the hopper and report it so that we could follow up with that resident to avoid a future event.
Right, so if you saw lumber or sheetrock or something like that, that would be a red flag.
It would go right back down.
Yeah. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
David, any questions?
Thank you, Dan. Just to, first the comment that the amount of work and energy and emotion that has gone into negotiating this particular contract, I just have to say thank you so much for the investment of administration in this. The second thing is, maybe for purposes of the FinCom hearing, it might be helpful to have a little YouTube, if you can, showing how this device works, because I've seen it in Somerville, where I used to go to some meetings, and I've seen it work in Somerville, but otherwise, I have not seen it work around here, and maybe that would be just an interesting thing. And the other thought, and now I know I'm supposed to know this, David, what exactly goes into the right recycling in Danvers? I've always put my Coke cans and dill pickle jars in there, but people who visit my house sometimes stuff cardboard, I don't know. What exactly is, for this contract coming up, is going to be recycling and what is going to be trash? You'll probably publish that, of course.
Yep. So we will be publishing it, and we're enhancing our flyers right now, but paper products will go in the recycle bin. That's paper like office business paper, that's cardboard boxes, that's other boxes in your home, magazines. All those clean paper products will go in there. Plastics that have the numbers on the bottom, the correct numbers on the bottom, not the rigid type of plastics like toys, but the regular containers, plastics that are containers that are clean will go in there, and glass products will go in there, as well as tin cans and aluminum cans. All of that will go together in that same bin.
With the cardboard?
With the cardboard,
Okay.
correct.
Yeah, okay, well, that's very interesting, and I think you've done a great job, whoever's worked on this project.
Yeah, Rob, so this is Rob Dever. He's our Director of Operations and worked, and now he's gonna have to really dig into the details on this as we set up the routes. Staff is planning a bag to be attached when your barrel is delivered, with instructions about it, the recycling information, all that, with those flyers in a paper bag, and obviously that same information will be right on our website.
One more thing, if I may, Dan?
Yes, please.
I sent to the town manager, and I asked to be sent to you. There's a magnetic thing. I was down in Provincetown at a community meeting 2 or 3 or 4 weeks ago, and representative of the trash committee was there with a table. And they had these magnetic things with every answer you'd like to know about pick up the trash, that it goes right onto the refrigerator. I've never really fully understand what goes in what and what day it's picked up, so to have that right on the refrigerator might be very helpful and efficient for us as we go on.
We may have to do that, especially in one of those where the calendar, you're gonna have to remember which week is your recycling week. We're gonna have to do a lot of advertising on that, and a magnetic calendar with the 2 different weeks could help us also.
But also not just the calendar, but the explanation of what goes in and what doesn't go in and what's prohibited, so that hopefully we get more compliance for
Agreed.
the process.
2 different subjects, agreed, yep.
So clarification, 2 points. 1 barrel per residence, is that a single family?
Single family will get 1 of each, multifamily will get more.
Thank you. And recycling, every other week, which means in a 5-week month, it'll still be every other week.
Correct.
So it won't be first and third and second and fourth. People are going to have to remember every other week.
Yep.
Thank you. Bill?
Two things. I know you're talking about trash and if you get a coffee cup, the paper goes in with the trash, not the recyclables. Some of the covers come, you know it's plastic, it looks like it, feels like it, but there's no number. That's trash?
Correct. If there's no recycling number on that, there isn't the 2, 3, or the 4, then it has to be trash, it can't be recycled.
I'm not trying to defend anybody, but this truck is gonna have 1 person on it?
Yes, it is.
Do we get a better price because someone's job is being lost?
Yes, we did.
That's unfortunate. Thank you.
Anything else, David? Gardner?
But I'm also assuming the economy of scale, and I think maybe the video might be good because the questions about extra bags, the intent is you go from 3 or 4 people on a truck to 1 person on a truck. That person can't get out of the truck to take a bag, and the height of the side of those trucks is enormous, given that it has to go up so high in tip. So it's not, you couldn't take the bag and throw it in, even if you wanted to. So I understand that there are going to be outliers, and I appreciate that you'll deal with the outliers when they come up, but that's like the 90-10 rule. So you're describing the result for 90 people, 90% of the people.
And I guess I answered Mr. Bracci too shortly, is someone, the haulers on the back, the guys that are on the back of the truck, theoretically we're not gonna have those type of employees anymore. However, that is a very, very dangerous occupation, and insurance requirements are requiring these guys to get out of there. And we are adding jobs on the other end where the recycling have to be sorted out. So we've added jobs in the pipe stream on that end.
Please.
I just wanted to say, I don't know that this is going to be addressed right now, but I understand that there are families that use or create more trash, but I'm not totally comfortable with providing barrels just kind of willy-nilly for the town. Like, I think it's on all of us to reduce the amount of trash that we make. So if they need to buy another barrel, they need to buy another barrel. That's all, thanks.
Thank you. All set, David?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Next, Mr. Town Manager?
Next is a bylaw that's been proposed. It's the wireless telecommunications bylaw, and I would invite either, I don't know if you want Clint to, David, if you want to take this.
Yeah, I think what I'll do is just kick it off, and we have Clint Allen here, our Assistant Electric Light Manager, and he'll jump right in with the details on this. And Clint was instrumental in writing this. I believe we've discussed this with the board, that we've been approached for a number of years now by carriers that want to install what's called small cell devices on Town of Danvers utility poles. These are like mini cell towers. It's just a small receiving device that mounts on a pole. Some of them mount halfway up the pole, some of them mount on the top of the pole. And it enhances cell service in the towns. It's being used especially in towns that have a lot of dropout areas, and that's where the companies have focused first. Danvers does not have a lot of dropout areas, but we have some. We kind of pushed back on this. We don't like the idea of more and more stuff getting put on the poles here in town. However, we worked through the DPU and found that we cannot legally prohibit these carriers from coming on our poles because they serve the common good. They're a utility. We can, however, regulate how these antennas are put on our poles so that they're put on in a safe manner, they don't affect the electric wires, and they don't affect any other carrier that's on the pole. Right now, we have phone lines on the poles, we have fiber optic, all of that. We don't want any of the uses to interfere with each other. So once we realized we had to allow this and that we needed to come up with rules in accordance with the law on how we could allow this, Clint and his staff looked at other municipalities that had adopted these bylaws, taken what information they had that applied to Danvers, put together the bylaw that is presented before you, and had it reviewed by council. And we present this bylaw in order so that we can regulate how these small cell repeaters are installed in Danvers. And it'd be similar to when a fiber optic carrier comes before us. We've had those, I don't know, a few of the board members here remember, we have a carrier come in, we vet it out ahead of time to make sure it fits within the law and that this is an allowed use. Then we would have the board adopt it subject to Danvers Electric approving the exact installation location, how it would go, and that they would accept the fees in accordance with that.
And if I could just add something I learned recently from Clint, that we have an anecdote in town where a telecom came forward and requested this. Staff was not comfortable. It was denied. They petitioned the state directly and got permission to install their own pole for this, which we then had to run utilities to from the electric department. So I think that the idea here is that they have a right to do this, and it's in our best interest to have rules and requirements and specifications in place that say exactly how and where we want to see that, as opposed to them circumventing Danvers Electric and going straight to the DPU and getting permission to install their own pole, which just adds to the eyesore.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, I wanted to check with Clint. Any other big things that you wanted to add before we get to questions?
What's it gonna cost us?
Oh, so we will be paid for each attachment. Anyone that wants to hook up to our pole will first have to pay for if the pole has to be changed, if other wires or things have to be moved on the pole, they'll have to pay that work, and then they'll have to pay a pole attachment fee, which is similar to the fees that we've adopted for our fiber optic carriers.
Very good, thank you. Questions, Gardner?
The explanation is the explanation, certainly not all the language in the contract, so this is probably in there, I'm certain. But what's the service level agreement if there's a repair to a pole? If you have to, it gets hit by a car, or you're trying to relocate wires? I know you have a very progressive manner in which cable, electric, and anything else on that pole is transferred over to a new pole. What's the service level agreement for this? Does the company have to respond on a date given, whatever it might be?
Yes, they are required to provide us with contact people who to call to do those repairs, and then they have to respond within a certain number of time.
Okay. And, because I can tell you, we've got a dropout area on Lindell Hill, which you wouldn't believe, which you wouldn't think, because you've got the old hospital right there. But as I drive down the street, there's one spot in the street on Fellows Street where it just drops completely out. But I always attributed that to the carrier, as opposed to, so is this a carrier specific? I'm going to call it an extender. Probably not the right terminology, but is there going to be a Verizon one and the other carrier?
So yes, we could have multiple carriers that want to put these devices on our pole, and we've set up the bylaw, if you read into the details of it, that we've tried to promote commonality. If there's an area where it's a drop-off, we are going to try to get them to, all the carriers, to put it on the same pole and work with that.
And we have a cable commission that deals with the current cable vendors, Comcast and Verizon. Can you have a third vendor who is not a cable provider per se, but can offer Wi-Fi and streaming services that isn't under the auspice of that commission or of those contracts?
So that's part of the initial vetting before before anything got proposed to the Board of Selectmen, to make sure it's an acceptable service and not in conflict with any other contracts.
But I'm not suggesting conflict with the Verizon or Comcast, but it can be a third option that we don't have control over as part of our cable advisory commission in the ordinances we have, or the oversight we have with those two carriers.
So there's certain sets of regulations they have to follow. They have to be serving the public as a whole. They can't just be there to serve one company and go on the municipal poles. So if they have to pass those tests to be able to be allowed.
Okay, because we get a considerable amount of money that supports DCAT through fees brokered through the Cable Commission and and their negotiations with those two companies. I'm worried is could a third one come in, independent of those two, provide services, cheaper, easier, faster, whatever it is, a better product, but then omit any payments to the town of Danvers?
That would have to go through a whole licensing procedure with the town.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, anybody else? Maureen?
No,
No.
all set. Thank you.
Matt?
Yeah, do you have a sense of the density? Like how many of these devices are you anticipating? Any sense of that?
Clint, do we have any information on that yet?
We have one. Clint Allen, Assistant Utility Director. At this point, we have one interested carrier. They're proposing 10 locations, primarily down the Sylvan Street corridor and over up 114.
So these devices supplement existing cell towers or cell installations that are already within the town?
Correct, and it's really the focus on the 5G deployment that they're looking at. So rather than putting up an 80-foot tower up at Kirkbride, they'd rather just run 10 of these down a street.
Right. So it's possible in the future that those large towers that we see like on top of the old fire station, those would become obsolete, and this would be more in tune with kind of smaller is better.
It seems
Yeah.
that's possible.
And we have something, the town has something similar, right? We collect data from our smart meters, water and electric. Is this a similar type of device?
Yep.
So maybe we could somehow piggyback off of these, and rather than have multiple devices that kind of are doing the same thing in the same location, kind of share them? I don't know if that's something that these applicants would approve of.
So we might be able to use that because we've used some WiMAX things on our initial deployment of that. However, at this point, it seems our biggest way to make the meter reading program better is the gentleman in the third row. As we expand the town's fiber optic, that's where we're putting our receivers on the end of that. And we're sending that out, expanding that program with our initial development plan.
All right. That's all I have. Thank you.
All right, anything else?
One more question. Could this be potentially a conduit to getting, I know we've kicked around the idea of town-wide Wi-Fi. Is this something we could
Colby?
piggyback?
Takes the whole gang for this one.
Yeah, Colby Cousins, IT Director. Yeah, townwide Wi-Fi, it would be kind of a byproduct of this. It would be controlled by the carrier,
Okay.
but it would be wireless internet service throughout the town. But it'd be similar to what you're used to now with cell phone service or something.
So it may be it may geographically be town-wide, but it would not be a town service.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, moving along.
Next will be Article 31, which is the Northland substation. So Clint may want to stay on his feet.
My hook, I should have reached out.
And that's on page 33 in your warrant books.
So the Northland substation is the substation behind the Liberty Tree Mall, adjacent to right next door to the Verizon service building that's back there.
The one that blocks everybody's view?
Correct. It's, yeah, we're sorry about that. Yeah, I know. So we're actually going to, the plan is to improve the view. As obviously, we all know that substation's been on the capital plan for a long time. It's time to replace it. And working with the mall in a partnership, we're able to obtain some additional property from the mall. We had to build them, we had to replace a parking lot, but now we got additional property next to the substation so that we can build a new substation next to the existing one and then switch it over. So we don't have to go an extended period without that substation, which would have been difficult. So the new substation will be moved further over into the woods, so we'll have some enhanced screening to improve the view. However, the cost of the substation is significant, as you can see. We looked at the capital plan and reviewed, should we try to increase cash funds, increase rates to pay for this quickly, or do it through bonding? When we looked at our debt for Danvers Electric, it's very low, and for a utility of our size, and it seemed the best and most economical plan would be to finance this over a portion of the life of the transformer. And then we wouldn't have a rate shock at the beginning of this to increase to pay for those costs. The station is being developed with our engineers in accordance with some consultants that are helping them. And the design is well along. We're actually going through a procurement process for the transformers right now, which is one of the hardest things we're trying to do. Transformers are one of the hardest things to purchase right now. They're in very short supply. But we're battling through that. And so this is a proposal to do bonding to replace the existing substation back there in accordance with our capital plan.
So once you acquire the transformers, then you'll start the work or start it ahead of time?
Once we get a delivery date for the transformer, then we'll get the work going.
And how long do you think the project will take?
It's a 3-year project.
3 years? Thank you. Any questions from the board members?
No, thank you.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Maureen.
So, with the work being done, is that gonna be done by Danvers Electric, or we're gonna because I see some subcontractors working on other jobs, and I'm just wondering about that.
It would be a combination. Some work would be done by Danvers Electric, line workers and tech services employees. Other will be done by contractor. Contractors that are used to install, the contractors that are used to installing equipment of this size, we would hire them. They're more effective because they're doing it all the time. And the hooking the lines up, bringing the lines, moving them, the stuff that we do all the time, we would do with our staff.
Right, because I'd want to keep the cost down by using our own people. Instead of
Absolutely.
the contractors. And you talk about financing, financing it over the life, what is it, that transformer? How long is that going to be?
So the 40, right?
For-
So it's a 40-year life, so we're only going to finance it for 10. So it's only on a portion of the life.
Okay.
All set?
I'm all set, thank you.
Matt?
Yep. So I recall a few years ago, town meeting authorized funding for that substation to add some redundancy. Was that for wiring, or was that for the physical plant itself? Do you recall that, some type of project like that?
At this particular substation, the only work that's been done to date is to build the replication parking lot. We haven't done any
Okay.
replication work other than some animal guards, some protective devices in the station, nothing for redundancy.
So-
We have done redundancy at other stations.
Okay.
The
So I
last one we
recall-
did was at the high school.
Yeah, so I recall maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I thought that there was a project that we were doing. We wanted to build in redundancy for that area of town. So was that for that specific substation, or was it just for cabling or wiring in that area?
So the redundancy project was over on Elliott Street, right across from the Endicott Plaza, and it entitled our service to the Mass General facility and another connection to Peabody Electric that we built
I see.
with an automatic reclosure system so that Peabody can knock into our system to help as a backup to that area of town. So that involved upgrades to that small switching station right at the back entrance to Endicott Plaza, the connection to Mass General, and the connection to Peabody.
Right, that's the one by Town Fair Tire, I believe, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. All right, well, it sounds like you're being proactive here with replacing the equipment before the end of life and potential impact to the residents of that area, so kudos to you. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Anyone in the audience? Oh, okay, next subject.
Next is the technology plan. We have 2 articles, 10 and 11, that fall under the jurisdiction of our IT director, who was referred to as a gentleman earlier tonight, which I'm sure he appreciates. And I would turn it over to Colby Cousins to walk through the proposal for this year.
Colby Cousins, IT Director.
Page 20.
Page 20.
Thank you, Colby. Welcome.
General meter. Just like,
Thank
you know,
you.
general page.
So for Article 10, the technology plan, the total request here is $389,446, and that is funded by free cash. That includes general government, public schools, the library, and expenses for regional IT of 90,000, for which we will return 130,000 in revenue. Any
So
questions
is
on this article?
that's not listed in here? in
The revenue is
description?
not, the revenue's not
So
listed in
repeat
there.
that, please.
130,000 in revenue will return on that $90,000 investment.
It is in the explanation at the very end. I think the second to last line.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, continue.
Thank you. Article 11, disaster recovery. This is a request for $100,000 to begin migrating our disaster recovery environment to the cloud. So the cloud represents some advantages for disaster recovery. We pay per our consumption in the cloud. Currently, we have an on-premise disaster recovery site at the high school. We have to make a full capital investment for all of those resources up front. The cloud model would allow us to pay a lower baseline cost while we're not actively using the systems. And then our cost would go up in a failover scenario or disaster recovery scenario, but those costs can be covered by insurance. So it's a financial savings. And there are benefits with geographic diversity of disaster recovery too, which we don't currently have.
So describe, it says near the end, every 5 years as a standard refresh cycle. What does that mean?
So our on-premise equipment, we make an upfront capital purchase. It's about $500,000. The equipment lasts 5 years. So it breaks down to about $100,000 a year.
Okay. Any questions?
No.
Matt?
There's a question about the DR. Many companies do drills, like exercises once a year. They do intentional failovers to just judge the recovery and just as a training exercise for the staff to, in case there was a real need for that. Is that something that the town does?
It is something that the town does, although we probably don't do it as well as we should. So one of the things that's built into this cloud option, there's a managed service, and part of the contract is they're required to manage a failover once a year. So we will be in a better spot in terms of our testing of those services on a regular basis.
Good. All right, that's good to hear, because you never know when you could have a catastrophic failure, or you could have like ransomware or some other type of situation that requires you to kind of deal with it in real time. So it's good to hear that you're I'm sure you have a significant plan in place at least.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, good to hear. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Dan?
Yes, David?
Thank you. Colby, you mentioned insurance.
Mm-hmm.
Is there insurance for disaster recovery in place that would be reliable with a legitimate company? Can you explain?
Sure,
I'm
yeah.
always nervous about
Yeah.
people say something's insured, and
Yeah, so we have an insurance policy, a cyber insurance policy with MIA, the Mass Interlocal Insurance Association. They provide us our insurance coverage across the board, but they also offer a cyber insurance policy. And that insures us in the event that some type of cyber incident takes down our systems. And all of the recovery associated with that is covered by our insurance. So whether or not the use of the disaster recovery services are covered by insurance may be affected by the reason we need to use them, but if it's a cybersecurity reason, cybersecurity incident of some type, then it's covered by our cyber insurance.
And then just the final thing is that, through you, Dan, I would ask
Yes.
the town manager, have we ever had legal counsel review I mean, I'm just very nervous through the years of dealing with insurance companies, and my experience is very much that they're in the business of not paying claims. And have we ever had anybody look at our policy to determine how adequate it is and whether there is something other than what is in place now? It's just, I'm nervous when I hear insurance for disaster, and then the disaster happens, and then what?
Yeah, so the town's worked very closely with Maya to establish the level of cybersecurity insurance that is required. Maya, on behalf of towns and cities, shops for property casualty and, in this instance, cybersecurity insurance. The number of vendors providing it is fairly limited. Colby's actually worked pretty closely with their claims team because the work we've been doing in Danvers is actually ahead of some of the thresholds that are now becoming standard and required in order to obtain insurance. So the short answer is yes. I mean, the Maya.
If the town manager and Colby are confident that appropriate insurance is in place, I'm comfortable. Thank you.
The insurance is appropriate. What's challenging for a lot of communities right now is getting up to the minimum requirements to qualify for the insurance in terms of multi-factor authentication. A lot of, and again, this is my second or third language. It's Colby's first language, but really credit to the work that has been happening regionally on the North Shore. Some of the smaller towns that are around us are also in a position where they can obtain that insurance because of the minimums that they now have in place as a result of participating in the North Shore IT Coalition. So we're well positioned here, and I think our team is in a place where Maya has been looking to them for help elsewhere in the Commonwealth to help some towns and cities stand things up.
Thank you.
Okay, all set?
Just one question, unrelated to the warrant. Just while you're here, I should have asked this afternoon. Have we recently changed the town's email filtering services? I've been getting a lot of you may be rich or sign up for this Nigerian prince kind of emails.
Yeah, we have switched over our spam filtration, so we're in the process of tuning that new filter now.
Okay.
So you should see all of that stuff improving over the next couple weeks or so.
Great, thank you.
Well, it seemed like recently we started getting bombarded with all these spam emails that we didn't get before.
After we had to change passwords.
Well, before
Yeah,
that
a little
even,
bit
but recently.
more.
So
Oh,
That's
all
what
of
I'm
a
saying,
sudden,
is
yeah.
they changed the service.
Yeah, we'll take a look. Maybe we need to dial something up for your
Yeah,
group
because
or
I'm getting
something.
2 or 3 a day.
Okay.
I didn't know it was so popular.
Yeah, we'll review that for you.
Okay, thank you. Next item.
Next is our pavement management and sidewalk improvements, and turn over to David Lane.
What page, please?
Same
Sorry,
page.
21.
Page 21.
Page 21, correct?
Yep.
This article, it represents money that the town appropriates to augment our Chapter 90 funds that's used in areas where our Chapter 90 money cannot be used to do either paving, repairs, or otherwise work on our roads and sidewalks, and most importantly, our handicap accessibility. So a big part of this goes towards our ADA program, which is handicap ramps, fixing sidewalks, items like that, crosswalks, all of that comes out of this. The amount varies from year to year, depending on the plan and available funding. Mr. Dever has worked with staff to put together our paving plan for the year, and this year we proposed $285,000, which would be used for paving, ADA accessibility improvements, sidewalks, and our whole pavement management plan.
Questions? No, none. Thank you.
The next Article 15, we'll let Mr. King.
14 and 15 are on page 22.
Good evening, Steve King, Town Engineer, DPW.
Welcome.
Thank you. Article 14, roadway layout and acceptance of public ways. This is came before the board earlier in March to propose 3 streets for public acceptance as public ways: Cemetery Road, Fowler Street, and Riverview Avenue. This article would be voted at town meeting to hear the report of the select board to approve these streets as public ways in the town.
Any questions? Nope.
Okay, thank you.
Bill?
Bill Bradstreet, town meeting member, precinct 1. I ask this all the time. How many streets and ways are we getting stuck with because the contractor walked away and left us with it? I know that I've been told the average cost is $6,000 per. How much money and how many of these roads are we still left with paying for?
Let me start. Before I get it back to Mr. King, let me start with the subdivisions right now. Stephen and his engineering staff are working extremely hard to make sure the roads are being finished to the level of acceptance, that all the work has been required. They're very carefully releasing any bond money on those jobs. And they've even worked with the planning department of the town of Danvers to pull in bonds from one of the old projects that the developer was not repairing it in time. So that Stephen's working with staff of the planning department to expend those funds on a road. We use the developer's funds that they put in from a bond to make the repairs, and then we'll propose it for acceptance. So there are a few roads out there that perhaps weren't done, but they're older roads done a long time ago, and we're gonna have to deal with that. And as far as the number of roads left to be accepted, Steve?
Sure, thank you, David. So we've separated them into really 3 categories for private ownership. We have 7 streets that will always remain private per the developer who owns the roadway. There are 9 streets that are currently under the ownership of developers, subdivisions post-1979 subdivision control bylaw. And then we have 50 private ways still eligible for acceptance that were prior to the 1979 subdivision regulations. And that's how we're going through that list each year.
So you're working on 50 or 59 or 60?
There are 50 that 50 with private ways that the town will be working through on the next article program, the $25,000 per year, to accept those ways. There are 9 streets still owned by developers that have existing bonds or tripartite agreements that still need to
Okay.
be finished, and they would be responsible for finishing those projects and bringing them forward to the town for acceptance.
And the number 7 was?
7 streets, those streets will always remain private. Those, an example, over at the mall, Federal Street, Constitution Lane, that we have named roads, but they're going to remain private with those developers.
Thank you. Any other questions? Bill?
Just to follow up, there's a lot of roads. Are we better off piecemealing them over a long period of time, or just paying a lot of money up front and getting done with it? I mean, I don't anticipate paying for everything for the rest of my life. I'd rather pay up front and be done with it.
I think they'll tell you that there's time involved to.
No, I understand. They have
that
to
it
do the
can't-
research for each
yeah.
of these. I mean, is it included in a big bill that it's done and done? Because it's not happening anymore. We're trying to clean up what was left over from before. I'm not
Well,
going to be
yeah.
around, so I'm not going to have to worry about it.
Stephen, you have an answer for that? Or David?
So the biggest answer to that is we're doing it in the most cost-effective way right now. We're using labor, we can fit it in with the engineering work plan, it's not affecting other capital projects. And we talk about how many we can do every year. Even doing it our way, we're still having to use some outside survey services, some outside title services to do this. However, most of the work is in-house staff that we can fit in the budget. If we did a big chunk, we'd have to look at hiring outside help, and then even if we hired outside people, they don't have the inside knowledge that our staff has of everything that went on with all the history of each of these streets. So right now, we think this is the most cost-effective way. However, every year we talk about it. Is there a way that we can come up with to do more of them quicker? Or is there a benefit to the town to do them more quickly? And we talk about that each year.
Anything else? Nope. Next.
Next is Article 16. This is the landfill gas collection system.
Did you want to talk Article 15, or did we cover that?
Oh, We're voting at the end. I thought we sort of covered both, but maybe I went too fast.
Yep, 15.
Okay.
Article 15, as quickly, so this is the actual program that we use to accept public ways in the town of Danvers. Typically, the cost 25,000 covers our layout documents, plans, in the order of takings, also council's time, as well as we're getting to the other 50 private ways that we're still looking at. We need to do additional work for as-builts or title searches, like David had mentioned earlier before.
Thank you. All right, all set? Okay, next, 16.
16, on page 23 in your booklets. This is one we started to talk about a little bit at a prior meeting, but Mr. King has overseen the scope of work here and can give the board an update in terms of what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, thank you. So Article 16 is the existing flare station replacement. So this is the landfill gas collection system that extracts the methane gas from decomposition at the landfill area, and then burns the methane gas out to a flare shroud. It was initially put online in 2013. These type of skid units that were installed at that time typically have a lifespan of 10 years, and we're at the 10-year lifespan right now. It's meant to run 24 hours a day based on the methane composition and quantity that's received on an hourly basis due to the decomposition within the landfill. We're permitted to actually have this in operation for the next 20 years, till 2033. Then we're allowed to actually request Mass DEP, Department of Environmental Protection, if we can actually take the service online. We've made some improvements to it to help it along as best we can, but at this time, we're recommending a full skid replacement of the unit, replacement for next year, for 20 years.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Can we get any funding or anything, because it's environmental?
We don't have any existing information about grants that are eligible for us to use for the construction of this process.
It's really unique, and it's a requirement of the closure of the landfill. So we're under unique laws to the town that were from DEP.
Yes, we have a required permit for the approval of the post-closure use of the landfill to operate the flare.
Okay, anyone else? Matt?
This flaring system, does it make noise?
You hear a small burp when it turns on
Okay.
to burn the methane gas, and that's it. No one else you can't hear it.
I'm curious, because there are Peabody residents that live to the sort of the left side of that area that's being filled in. Is that where is the flaring operation?
So we've tried, it's down in a valley between two of the landfills, so when it was designed, the location and the piping was designed to pull it as far enough away from those Peabody residents possible and get it at the bottom of a valley so that it would buffer any noise
see.
and visibility.
Okay, all right, that's good to hear. All right, that's all I have. Thank
Anyone
you.
else? Audience? No.
Nova Yosemite Town Meeting Member, Precinct 1. Is this the best way to get rid of the methane for a flare? I mean, is there a better way environmentally to dispose of the methane that we're capturing?
So at first, when the landfill was closed, we thought the landfill was just going to decompose and it was not going to produce enough methane so that we wouldn't have to do this. Testing further found that we were doing just enough that we needed to do something to either catch it and like try to haul it away somewhere. And DEP recommended this is what we do, to burn it off in this manner, that the DEP recommended this was the cleanest way. And we have barely enough methane to keep this going. We have to use some propane at times to do it. So it's not like there's any excess generation. So it's just barely enough that we have to keep it. But the DEP vetted this process and recommended how to do this way.
So did we ask them what their current feeling is about how to get rid of the methane?
Yeah, but we submit how much gas we're getting each year in our reports, and that has stayed the same. And like Stephen said, right now, we believe we're going to have to do it to the end of that 20-year period. We'll continue. If it drops before that, we'll go back to DEP and see if we can stop doing this. Basically, if we don't have any to run the flare, we'll go back to them for an amendment. But right now, we're planning to have to do this for 20 years.
Thank you. Bill?
Bill Bradstreet, I know I've asked it before. Burning something, is there any benefit monetarily for us as opposed to it just being burnt and disappearing wherever. I mean, it's a power source when it burns. Isn't this something, sorry, isn't this something we can get for us out of just burning it or burning it off?
So to answer Mr. Bradstreet, like I said, we just barely have enough gas to even ignite itself. Sometimes we have to help the gas augment it with something else. So there's no excess gas that could generate any power or any heat or any, it's just a very little amount of gas, but it's over the regulatory threshold.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, number 29.
Number 29 is a standard. This is the vote each year that says we will hold the state harmless for work that they do, improving drainage throughout the town.
Questions?
Trying to get that.
None? No questions? Okay, thank you.
So the table here lists a number of articles that the town engineer will walk through. These start on page 24 with Article 18. This is the Adams Street culvert replacement. And we can walk through these projects and answer questions as we go.
Thank you, Steve. The first one is Article 18, the Adams Street culvert replacement. This is something that I've tried to put forth for a few years now. It's an existing 24-inch reinforced concrete pipe that transmits water from the Cranebrook tributary between Pine Street and Sylvan Street. Right now, there's an also abutting the existing drain pipe is a retaining wall right next to an abutter. The retaining wall has since failed. There's no head wall supporting the actual culvert pipe. The pipe is now, because of the erosion and storm runoff, the pipe is disconnected from the actual stream bed, so it's elevated about 2 feet above the stream bed, causing eroding banks through the river. So the recommendation is to replace the culvert pipe, replace the head wall, and also the retaining wall next to the existing house at 55 Adams Street.
Okay, next.
Questions?
Question?
All set?
Yes.
Article 19, Perkins Road sewer replacement. This past winter, we discovered that the existing sewer main that runs from the intersection of Princeton and Perkins up to pretty much where Frost Brook is on Perkins Road doesn't have the proper slope in it. This is a previous Woodville subdivision sewer installation. We need to replace the sewer main, bring it to the correct slope so that the residents who are tied into that are probably able to get their sewage to our distribution transmission system in the roadway.
So is this not something that's been going on for a number of years?
It's built up because usually if we have enough flow in certain pipes, it's able to move itself, but because of the amount of limited flow in the low slope of the gravity sewer main, it's built up and then it backs up. So we're having to pick up the pipe, put it back to the correct slope so we can get it. We don't have any backups in that area.
Any questions? No. Okay, next.
Number 20 is warrant article number 20 for pump station pump replacement. This is something I brought forth every couple of years to repair our existing pumps in our submersible pump stations for a wastewater collection system. We usually do 2 to 3 every couple of years based on the life expectancy of these pumps. Usually last 7 to 10 years. So we're going and replacing them or upgrading them as necessary.
Questions? No. Next.
Article 21 is the Summer Street Pump Station generator replacement. The Summer Street Pump Station is our largest pump station in town. It takes a good amount of our flow from the area, including next to the Smith School, St. John's Prep. The generator is at its useful life. It's over 35 years old. We've done as much as we can to keep it in shape, keep it up to par with what we need. But at this point, from our contractors and subcontractors who've worked on the generator, it's at a point where it needs a full replacement. There's no other small maintenance items that we can do or repairs to it to improve it. So we're requesting amount of $350,000 to do a full replacement of that generator for the pump station.
So when I read the article, it says extraordinary repairs, maintenance, doesn't say anything about replacement. Which is it?
It's a full replacement.
It doesn't say it. So let's correct that, please. Any questions? Next.
Article 25, we voted on Tuesday. So go to 28.
Article 28, drain maintenance. This is the annual maintenance appropriation to assist the DPW department with stormwater improvements and drainage repairs within the town public ways. Questions of that?
Well, I'm trying to find the page, Stephen, I'm sorry.
Page 31.
Sorry, that's
Thank
on
you.
31.
Any questions, member of the board?
Right here.
Go ahead, Matt.
So a few years ago, we expended a significant amount of work on the Frostfish Brook through Woodvale section. That work, I think, was necessary because there was a lot of debris thrown into the Frostfish Brook by abutters. I think yard waste, lawn clippings, that type of thing. Have we been monitoring for that type of activity since we added all the riprap along and we hardened the banks? Have we done any type of kind of visual inspections to be sure that that behavior no longer exists?
I typically do a walk once or twice a year with the conservation agent, and we'll walk the entire brook, Beaver Brook, Frostfish Brook, to check for any illegal dumping in that area.
And then just to kind of follow up to that, just due to, you know, the growth of brush that would occur there just naturally, is that something that we, the town kind of has a program to kind of control any type of, because, you know, if the brush kind of grows down into the waterway, that can capture leaves or whatever and cause types of backup. So that's kind of just a natural occurring phenomenon. Is that something we also look for?
Yeah, as part of our inspection, I'll walk through the brooks. We have to make sure that, you know, no
Okay.
oversized logs or break off or trees float down and block
Right.
and impede any of the flow in the
Yeah.
culverts. So we're
Okay.
actively looking for those.
All right,
to
that's
make-
good
and
to
if there
hear.
is an issue, we do call the street and highway department to come help us out and take them out.
Okay, that's good. And then, does this also cover storm drains that are in the streets?
That's
The-
correct.
Do we have a program for maintenance, not necessarily on an annual basis, but they have like a clamshell device, the truck that is used to clear those drains out? Is that something we also have a program for?
Yeah, that's required by our MS4 permit with the state and the EPA. We're required to annually clean our catch basins. We do a third of our catch basins every year.
I see. And if residents thought that the catch basin in their neighborhood, they could contact your office and someone would come out and take a look at it?
Yep, absolutely. My office or the town hall
Okay.
office, DPW.
All right, that's good to hear. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Nope. Next,
Next is
Article 24.
page 26.
page 26.
Yep. Greenleaf Drive wastewater pumping station. This is an article to have the town meeting vote to take by eminent domain the easements required to construct the gravity sewer main to replace the existing pump station on Greenleaf Drive. And those are at the specific properties at 7 and 9 College Pond Road, 40 and 44 Summer Street, and 8 Greenleaf Drive.
And is this something that we've already approved
We've already approved the appropriation for the construction of the,
so now we're doing the eminent
now we're
domain?
doing the eminent domain taking.
Any questions? Matt?
So homeowners on Greenleaf Drive, they're directly impacted? We're doing takings from private property, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And we are paying for this? We're paying like fair market value for the land?
Yeah, so we had to do an appraisal, we did the survey, we did an appraisal of the properties. We have those values, and based on those values, we'd be paying fair market value for the cost of taking that specific square footage of their property for the easement.
Okay. And you've kind of negotiated with them, or not like a heavy-handed approach, but kind of met with them, and, because I know many of them are impacted by this project, and it's not, I'm sure they understand the necessity of having this upgraded. So, and you also assume that you're taking the minimum amount of land that's necessary for the project.
That's correct, we're taking the minimum amount, which is typically a 20-foot permanent easement for the construction and access for us to access the pipeline in the future. I've had many sit-down conversations with each of the residents and homeowners. They've sat with me at the conservation hearing meetings that we've had. We've had discussions back and forth. But obviously, on the advice of legal counsel, this is the proper way to take the easements through eminent domain.
Yeah, I understand. And so at the end of the project, the pipes will be buried, and so from just a casual look from the street, you wouldn't see any piping or anything that might detract from the value of the homeowner's property?
That's correct, yeah. The pipes are completely buried on the ground. The manholes are strategically located, so they're at the rear of the properties or corner of the property, so they're not going to be protruding out for the homeowners to see. We're going to have to do some restoration work with some looming seed, sod work, and some of the yards that we're going to be disturbing as well.
Well, that's great. So thank you for that approach. Appreciate it.
The cost for this was covered by the previous appropriation?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Bill,
Dave, go ahead.
It's really not a question, but if I lived on Greenleaf Drive and the town wanted to put in a sewer line so that my toilet would work, it seems to me absurd that the town has to pay for the ability to be able to have somebody's toilet flush. And so that always just troubles me on any of the installations on private property, to make the private property more valuable and functional. Nothing else, thank you.
Thank you. Bill, you had a question?
Again, Bill Brasby. At a meeting, I don't recall when this was being discussed, someone discussed replacing trees that will have to be cut, and some decorative or whatever, some bushes, shrubs that hide this project. Am I not remembering what I heard? Not from you folks, it might have been from a private entity, had something to do with the property coming up Greenleaf.
So there's a question at the conservation hearing. We're going to have to take some fairly large trees, cut them down and remove them from where the proposed sewer main's going to go. The question was, can we replant those same type of trees, elms, oaks, back in the same area? And obviously we said we can't. We don't want the root intrusion to go near the utility. So trees can be replanted, but that to be replanted outside the permanent easement. Did that answer your question?
Okay, thank you. Next.
Next is Article 22, which is on page 25.
Article 22, the water main replacement program. This $2.9 million appropriation would allow us to start our Phase 2 Year 1 water main replacement. If you can remember, 4 years ago, we appropriated a borrowing of $10 million, $2 million over the past 5 years to replace water mains on Hobart Street, Andover Street, Cabot Road, Cornell Road, Oberlin Road, and we also did Amherst as well. This next phase would take us into approaching some of the streets off of Locust Street and Wenham Street. These were also highlighted in our capital improvement program as streets that have multiple breaks over the past couple of years.
So 3 streets, Steve?
It's going to be, we're proposing to look at 3 streets, Green Street and Locust Street, and we have to do some replacements on Andover Street, the other side of Andover Street between Watson Parkway.
Okay, questions? Matt?
So these water mains, they were in such a condition that the internal liner wasn't possible and required a full replacement? Because I know in the past, or we have a program where we can do sort of a non-invasive procedure where we can line the inside of the existing pipe to prevent any leaks.
So there is two separate processes for lining. There's one that you may be alluding to, the sewer projects, the comprehensive sewer lining projects. You can also line water mains, but that reduces the capacity of the
I
actual
see.
water main. So these streets that we've picked for the first 2 years are streets where we need to upsize the actual mains.
Okay, I thought
As
it
well.
was for water mains as well, but.
You
okay.
can line water mains, correct? But it obviously reduces your capacity if you're lining it because you're shrinking the diameter of the pipe.
Okay. And so you're actually digging up the road to lay these new lines?
That's correct.
And you'll be repaving them or just patching them?
We'll be repaving
Oh,
full
sure.
street, curb to curb.
Sure, the residents will be happy about that. And what's the length of the project? I think that you'll run water lines along the sidewalk or some type of temporary connections into the homes?
Yeah, so we typically have tried to average about just under a mile of pipeline replacement a year. And during those pipeline replacements, we'll be replacing everybody's water services from the new water main to their existing curb stops or shut-offs in their yard with new 1-inch copper
I
services.
see.
Yes, there are temporary bypass lines as well.
Okay, yeah, and how, so this will be kind of a reasonable amount of time where the homeowners are impacted by this project, or is it kind of like a summer-long type thing? Is it?
It can typically
Can you
last
estimate?
4 to 6 months
Yeah.
for a water main project.
Yeah.
Based on the timing when we start, the conditions of the road, are we in a high travel road where we're detouring vehicles around us? Are we able to shut the road down? How many service connections are there per household?
Okay. And just one last thing. So these are water lines that you've encountered problems with, kind of like reoccurring leaks or breaks, and that it's just, it's gotten to the point where it doesn't make financial sense to kind of keep patching them.
Where we've consistently had 2 to 3 breaks over the past 2 to 3
Yeah.
years on
Okay.
these streets.
All right. Thanks for that information.
Anyone
That's all I
else?
have.
Can I follow up to Mr. Duggan's question? You probably have considered this, but would you consider oversizing the piping that you're replacing so that in the future, if you had to interior line it, you would still derive the same cubic foot capacity? Just a thought that if you went to a different size diameter, and instead of having to replace those in whatever X number of years, they would be then capable of carrying the same load if you had to put lining in. Is it better to be maybe spend a little more money to be proactive for the future savings?
Oh, well, we have kind of planned out in advance the specific areas where we do want to upsize it because of the way the water flows throughout this distribution system.
Right.
So we kind of have that in place. Some of the smaller areas, they may not see a development that would actually encourage you to go bigger and spend the money now. The cost of ductile iron has significantly increased over the past couple of years. Lead times increases, so for where we can increase the pipe, we're gonna do that.
Okay.
Other areas, it may not make sense, because obviously you have to make sure you're getting the proper flow through the streets as well, so you don't wanna oversize a main, and not be able to pull enough water through all the houses.
Very
as
good,
well.
thank you. That makes sense.
Anyone else? Okay, next, 23.
23 is the Putnam Lane Booster Station rehabilitation. This is to provide upgrades to our existing booster station, water booster station, for the pump control panels and electrical replacements within the station. Putnam Lane Booster Station.
Thank
You may
you.
say Putnam Street on the draft.
Excuse me. Any questions?
Yeah, can you just, you say Putnam Lane, this is out off of, on the.
Off Dayton Street.
Dayton Street,
Yep.
right, okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, next.
Next is Article 26, which is our annual buildings improvement article, and that's on page 27 in the booklets.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, Stephen, Mr. Chairman. The building improvement article is those items that we recommend for repair that are outside the level of work that we can do under our normal operating budget. And, Mr. Chairman, I'll just keep going through them and perhaps questions at the end of the article.
Thank you.
We start out with the elementary schools. The first one is replacing the entrance intercom systems at 3 elementary schools. These are existing systems we put in place when they first did the upgraded security at the schools. They need to be redone with new modern equipment that function and don't fail on us and don't break down. So this is the systems, the intercom. When you get to the front door of the school, you push a button, you talk to someone, and then that person's able to buzz you in the front door. So you'd be redoing those systems at the 3 elementary schools at the cost of $4,000. The second one over at Great Oak School, this is our annual program of taking school classrooms that have worn carpet that's just worn out and replacing it with vinyl tile and a few throw rugs in select areas. So we've gone through the other elementary schools, and Great Oak is the one that we're trying to work through. This is the second year of doing these carpet replacements at Great Oak School, and we recommend 4 classrooms at the cost of $30,000. At Great Oak School, the third one, part of the exterior wall that was part of the old school before the renovation, we need to do some maintenance work on the brick walls, touching up the repointing, touching up the lintels around the windows to prevent water intrusion through that masonry wall at the cost of $8,500. At the Great Oak School, we have a set of doors that go into the gymnasium. They're metal doors that have been corroded, and right now they're worn. They've been adjusted to try to get operating correctly. They're used very frequently every day, and they've been repaired and now are in need of replacement at the cost of $15,000. At Thorpe School, we have a ADA, handicapped chairlift that goes up and down from the cafeteria level up to the classroom level. That we just were able to repair it to get it working. However, it's at the end of its useful life, and it's just very hard for us to find parts for it, to fix it. We were very lucky to be able to fix it this time, and it's very important for that school to be able to get the students up and down from those 2 levels. Unfortunately, the cost is relatively high. It's $60,000 for a complete replacement. At Riverside School, we have the exterior door alarms. These are not the front doors, but the doors around the building. The alarms that go around the buildings are failing, are not dependable right now. We have them working. However, we recommend replacing that system so that we can have a dependable system so that everyone in the school knows when there's a door open, and doors cannot be opened without knowledge of staff. At Riverside School, this one's a little unique. The actually lock cylinders on the doors are wearing, and we're having trouble with the actual locks on the doors. We looked at whether this should be a fob system or a key system. We definitely need some kind of replacement system to get dependable locks on the doors. And right now, it's been recommended for these doors to do a simple key system, replace the lock sets at the cost of $15,000. At Riverside School, similar to Great Oak, a little bit older, but we have a set of gym doors out there, the ones that get a lot of use that have been rotted and repaired, and it's time to replace those doors at a cost of $15,000. The next one, we have 2 HVAC air conditioning improvements that we need to do, one at Riverside and then one at Highland. These are small units that we need to replace. We need to take out the units that were put in as part of the renovations, and we can put in the new modern efficient split units at each of these spots. At the elementary school, we've had a multi-year program of going around and changing the bubblers, or water fountains in the schools. It's been well received. We'd like to continue that program. We're doing 8 more of them and fund it through our WUMP program at the cost of $40,000.
Yes.
Just a question on these. Are they going to be similar to the ones we have in Town Hall where you can fill water balls at the
Yes,
same
sir.
time?
Yep.
Great, thank you.
And can I ask, do we test the water from the, are they tested? Like, we want to make sure, you know, I was always growing up as Danvers had the best water with the fluoride.
Yep.
But, you know, don't drink water, you know, from the bubblers, we used to call them.
Really?
Yeah. So, I don't know. Did I call them bubblers?
Well-
Show my age.
One thing that as Mr. Trask mentioned, the new devices are set up so that you don't have to touch it. You can just hold a bottle there, and there's no touching
But the
or.
water coming from.
But the water coming in is,
That
they're
is being-
designed to have fresh water coming through. Water doesn't sit
Like a
inside there.
filter, like a
It's
filter?
not filtered, it just doesn't sit inside. So it's fresh water coming from the pipes in the school.
All right, I like to have it tested for the kids.
So, yeah, we test all our water around,
Okay.
but we don't individually test those water fountains, but it's the same as it coming out of a sink. It's designed so it's just as fresh as coming out of a sink, not sitting in there like the old type.
Okay, I'm showing my age.
Yeah. Mine. The next one over at the Holton Richmond School, which.
Before we go. could I
sure.
ask you a question? What is WUMP?
Oh, WUMP is the water use mitigation program, where when we have a development in town, the development, if they're going to put additional water demand on our system, they have to pay a fee to the town for us to offset their water demand and find a way to save water somewhere else. So such as if a new building was made, they pay, if they're gonna add 1,000 gallons per day to our system, they have to pay a fee so that we can go out in the system and save 1,000 gallons somewhere else in the system.
Thank you.
The next Holton Richmond, which we think is brand new, I guess it's not brand new anymore. In the art rooms, the traps in the sinks have become a maintenance problem with all of the different paint and debris that goes into those sink traps, and we need to replace those sink traps. We have maintained and cleaned them, now it's time to replace them. Holton Richmond, each year we go around and look at our schools to where we can make lighting improvements for new energy efficient LED lights. It was recommended by our building supervisor to look at the stairway light fixtures, which is actually a tough bulb and expensive bulb to get due to the fixtures. We'd like to replace those through our electric division energy efficiency program at the cost of $7,500. At the high school and the Holton Richmond, we have bleachers. So Holton Richmond, they move up from the wall. The high school, they move around the field house. So the bleachers are moved around a lot, and they're maintained. However, at this time, there's a number of repairs which have been recommended by the bleacher company in order to keep them safe and fully operational. And the estimated cost of these repairs is $18,000. At the high school, we have 3 water heaters. This is for hot water in the restrooms, in the kitchen. We need 2 of them all the time, and we have a 3rd one for redundancy. That 3rd one has failed and is out of service. So it's time we're going to get through this school year, and then we recommend replacing that 3rd one so that we have 3 operational ones at the cost of $27,000. I'd expect we're probably going to replace this one, and then next year have another one, and the year after that do the 3rd, is how these things usually go. At the high school, our boilers, if anyone saw the boilers, we call them suitcase boilers. They're almost is the size of 2 of these podiums right here. They're very small, efficient boilers. However, they all have a small LED screen on them. And that little LED screen is important for the staff to be able to tell what's going on and be able to adjust it. They've failed. Those LED screens, we can replace them with a like unit that will go on there. However, there's a cost of $21,000 to replace those access screens on each of the boilers. This is for the heat, the boilers for the heat in the building. At the high school, we have a floor machine that gets used every day, cleans a lot of area in the school, and that we've been working along. However, it's at the end of its life and in need of replacement. So this is a big cleaning machine, 30 inches wide. The cost to replace this is $26,000. We'd be replacing just like the one we have, which has been very successful. And then the last one is classroom modifications, $25,000 for changes to our schools that come up due to a change in the school program that is unanticipated. So we work with the school department on how to expend those funds.
Any questions on the schools? Bill?
I just had a question. When you say about replacing the locks and stuff like that, I haven't been to the elementary school in a while, but when they buzz people in, is there cameras too?
Yes, they have cameras
Okay.
also.
All right, we wanna okay, great, thank you.
Bill?
The camera situation I was gonna ask about also, by buzzing something and someone saying, who I am, and just being allowed in. I don't think is sufficient, especially with what we read about in the newspapers these days.
So I should clarify, a couple of the elementary schools are designed with windows. There's a staff person that can actually look out the window and doesn't buzz anyone in because they can make a visual identification on that person.
Which is a big plus. When you talk about the art room supplies and they're dumping stuff down the drain that's deteriorating or causing them to have to be replaced, isn't there a better system? I mean, are they dumping just water-based paint, oil paint? Isn't there a better system for getting used to what you don't use or can't need? Is it considered hazardous just to dump it in our sewer system? I'm sorry.
Yeah. So these are paint products that are used by the students, so they're not hazardous. It's water-based paint and that type of thing. And but they're washing brushes. They're not doing anything out of the one, but they're washing brushes. But now we have 20 years of washing brushes in these sink traps.
Okay, thank you. On to Endicott Park.
So over at Endicott Park, we've worked with the staff over there, and our buildings division staff has inspected the buildings to find out what's the priorities over there. And right now, we have the masonry walls of the garage that need to be repointing. Underneath the barn, there's electrical updates that need to be done, and we've worked out to use the Essex Tech students to do the electrical work, and we'd supply the supplies. So that's in process, and it would be overseen by the town electrician. We'd like to do that work. And then also, there's some renovations of the corn crib. That's the little building out back that we need to do that's fallen into disrepair. And then also, we need to start working on the conference room. So the conference room, especially the south-facing wall that has big windows, or they're big, actually, doors that open up. We've got some rot starting on that wooden wall. We need to get in there, do some exploratory work. This is just probably the start of the work that's going to be needed to be done on that carriage, the conference room wall. Probably it's going to lead to more of an extensive project on that wall in the upcoming years.
Questions, Matt?
Yeah, question about the hay barn, is that included in any of this work?
Not the hay barn. So we don't have any big projects in the hay barn other than upgrading some electrical stuff inside the hay barn.
So there was a project a few years ago that talked about doing some major renovation. What's the condition of the roof, do you know? Is it kind of weather tight, the outside of the outside envelope? I'm just concerned about, it seems like it's not really garnering much attention these days. Have you taken a look at that?
Yeah, so my staff has taken a look to keep the building weather tight, and that's the threshold that we've used to make sure the eaves, the windows, the doors are weather tight on that building.
Yeah,
So
especially
that
the roof, right? Because it'd be a shame to see that building deteriorate. Maybe in the future sometime we'll be able to kind of do something more robust. But
Yep, we share the exact thought.
yeah, that's great. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else here? No. Bill?
Again, it says building. Is that strictly just the building? If you go up there to attend a meeting at night, the roadway, the walking around the building is the very least dangerous, especially at night. Is the roadway part of this, or is that covered under something separate?
We have roadway covered in a couple other areas. And we do, through the street division, some work, and the staff at Endicott Park do a lot of work on the roads and walkways. They are gravel walkways in character with the antique place that it is, so they do take a lot of work and might not always be perfect, like a concrete sidewalk, but they are maintained very well by the Endicott Park staff.
Can I ask a follow-up question to
Yep.
that? So was there another article that covered adding more gravel or stone dust, but maybe it was for Ingersoll Street, or is that something that we already discussed previously?
No, we're going to get to that we do that in the grounds improvement
Oh, I
article.
see, okay, all right.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, next.
The next, we jump over to the fire stations. The projects at the fire stations that have been identified as a priority is it's Central Fire downtown On the first floor in the back, they have a conference room training area with a floor that is very worn and in poor condition. We'd like to replace that with a non-slip rubber floor that is more in keeping with the use of that room. It'll be durable, last for a long time, at the cost of $22,500. Over at Central Fire, and then on Central Fire, also on the second floor, we did some painting on the second floor. We need to finish that painting up. We did it as a two-phased project. We'd like to do the painting of the hallways and the offices on the second floor. And then another project for our electric division energy efficiency program is on that second floor to replace the old lights with LED fixtures, to replace the old lights that are very outdated, and this will both enhance the lighting up there and they'll be energy efficient.
Questions on the fire? Hearing none, go ahead.
On the library, the priority project is on the back of the building. We're getting water penetration through the wall into the children's room. So we have a retaining wall that was built on the back of that building when they put in the children's garden. We need to excavate that dirt away and get in there and redo the waterproofing on that masonry wall. We got to dig in there. We have nailed it down. We know where the penetration's happening. We just have to dig down to it and then protect it so water can't get through the wall. Unfortunately, the cost of that right now is estimated to be $35,000, mostly due to the excavation that's going to be needed.
Questions? Nope. Go ahead.
Other buildings, over at the Tri-Field, the press box is in need of repair. This will be done a combination of in-house staff and a little bit of contract help, but mostly in-house at the cost of $8,500, which is mostly for supplies. And then the last one, we have building modifications for $25,000 if there's a change in building program offices that we need to work with the town manager to make during the year that's unexpected.
Okay, questions? No?
I had a question.
Yes.
Just curious. I mean, everything's expensive, we know that, and we want to, put money into our buildings. But how do you determine these dollar amounts? Like, do you get estimates? I mean, how, do you get a couple of them, 3 of them? Are we having town workers do them? I see we have some of the Essex Tech kids do some. I mean, to have $26,000 for a cleaning machine, it's expensive. I just want to know, just so I understand it, please, how these costs come about.
Sure. So to do these budgets, we have at least one quotation, sometimes 2, on the materials. My folder over there has a quotation for the anticipated cost of what the cleaning machine is. And then when it comes time to purchase, we'll go to a state bid or a bidding process to buy, or a quote process to buy that, and really try to do the best. But we get quotes for everything that's in here ahead of time to help us develop an estimate.
A couple of them too, right?
Well, at this time, we might get 2 to do an estimate, but it depends. Not more than 2.
Okay.
I'm sorry, for clarification, you meant 2 for an estimate,
For
but when
an
the
estimate.
RFP goes out, it's whatever the
Whatever the
market
requirement
bears.
is.
Okay, so it's
Exactly.
not just, when you do an RFP, it's however many people want to respond, you pick the best condition.
Yep.
Not necessarily the best price, but the best opportunity.
Yep. Some of these I have to do a project estimate on with materials. I have to figure the materials, a 5% escalator on that, because we're not going to do it till 6 months from now. We do it just like a project estimate, each one.
And who does the work? Do some of the town employees do some of the work too?
Yep. It's a combination.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. Next article, please.
The next one,
Last article tonight is 27. It's on page 30, and before David jumps in, I wanted to acknowledge the last member of the DPW team.
all right.
You've heard from the divisions that will build and construct and estimate. Angelica Medina, our DPW business manager, is the one who checks their math and pays their bills. So nothing gets done without Angelica's input and guidance. So she hasn't been to the podium yet, so I wanted to at least acknowledge that she's been here for the whole meeting. Go ahead, David.
Thank you, Steve. Yeah, she's supposed to sit right next to me so that we have the exact figure right. So, thank you. Welcome, Angelica. On the grounds improvements, the first one on the grounds improvement is down at Plains Park, the Brown 2 field. And that outfield of Brown 2, we've had a long time of trying to get that outfield to drain. Our staff has worked with to look at it, take a look at that. They've had a little help from Stephen King's engineering staff and talked to Recreation, come up with a plan that we can spend $12,000, which we believe is a relatively small amount of money, and improve the drainage in that field with some under drains. And we believe it'll greatly enhance the playability down at Plains Park on that little field. Over at John George, the the infield of that field, we need to do $4,000 worth of repair. This is our normal baseball field infield repair where you have to cut back the edge of the infield, get the clay back, make sure the clay's at the right level, and then new sod around the outside so that everything's at the same level. And we have to do it at John George this year for the cost of $4,000. Over at the rail trail, we do like to appropriate some money towards the maintenance of our rail trail. This year, we propose $8,000, which would be going towards maintenance and resurfacing, working with the rail trail committee. Over at Highland School, we have a bridge that goes on the pathway in between Highland School and the Senior Center. It was built by the Eagle Scouts and built it. Right now, it is needing some repairs. So right now, we propose $3,500 to do some repairs on that. We're probably going to end up making some improvements to it. The manager, Steve, doesn't know. We found one that we can model on one of my hikes, one of my weekends. I found one we can model and improve the railing system and such on that to even make it a little bit of a nicer bridge. We found that a lot of people are using that pathway between Highland and the Senior Center. It was a great idea to have that path go through there. So we're going to spend $3,500 and mostly in-house help to improve that bridge. The outside water bubblers, we still have outside water bubblers to do. We've got the ones at John George and down at Brad Street Ave that we'd like to replace with the new ones that have been very well received and they use less water at the cost of $14,000 for those two water bubblers, outside water bubblers. Endicott Park, each year we do some fencing and gate replacements. We've got 600 feet of 3-rail fence and the gates. And so there's $15,000 worth of fencing that we need to replace down there. And here's the roadway maintenance that Mr. Duggan mentioned before, that $8,000 for some gravel, stone dust to do the maintenance on those roads down at Endicott Park. In a previous year, we had to do the roads over by the Ingersoll. This year, we need to do the ones more in the park itself.
Will you do anything with the ones near Ingersoll?
Yeah, they'll get annual grading and touched up, but they just need annual touch-up, some of them need more maintenance than others.
Okay, thank you. Anybody with questions? Bill?
I know the outside water bubblers are important for people who need the hydration. What's the vandalism situation on them? Are they vandalized at all, or are people respecting the fact that they're there and using, not abusing them? Just a cost, if so.
I hate to say we never get vandalism, I'll sabotage it, but vandalism has not been a real problem on these. And they're expensive because they're commercial, heavy grade ones that we can get replacement parts for. So we've been able to repair a part if it gets damaged, but vandalism has not been a problem where we'd want to stop doing them.
Okay, anything else? What's next, Mr. Town Manager?
That wraps it up.
So,
Did we, Mr. Chairman, through you, did we discuss Article 4, the Essex North Shore Tech? I don't believe so.
We
right at the
did,
beginning.
we did that during the budget workshop
Yeah.
on Saturday the 18th.
And we took a vote on this article?
We did.
Okay. Because I wanted to offer an amendment to that, but I guess it's too late.
But you guys, it's the discretion of the board. I mean, the board hasn't transmitted this to the FinCom yet. You can revisit any of the votes.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that we accept the remaining items, and I'd like to consider 4, with 21 with the correction that you made, which is replacement instead of extraordinary repairs,
Yes.
which is 7, 10, 11, 13 through 16, 18 through 20, 21 with correction, 22 through 24, 26 through 29, and 31. That should be the remaining items.
That covers everything.
That covers
That's your
everything.
motion to accept.
A motion to accept with a favorable recommendation.
Was there one about Putnam Lane versus Putnam?
We'll make that correction as well.
That correction as well.
Thank you,
Putnam.
with the correction of Putnam Lane versus Putnam Street,
Those are the
with those two
corrections.
corrections.
Yeah. Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, none. Thank you, staff, for coming tonight, sitting patiently.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask that we consider reopening number 4? I don't know what the best process to do it, ask for reconsideration and vote on that, or do it?
No, you can ask for reconsideration on number 4.
I would like to ask for reconsideration on number 4.
Is there, I'm not too sure, my Robert's rules tonight didn't bring
I'll
up
make a
on the-
motion, just in case it's
Please.
necessary. I'll make a motion, we reopen the discussion on Article number 4.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Make your amendment. No
Just for the
discussion.
correct count, I think you said no?
Yep.
So
It's 4-1.
4-1. Mr. Chairman, I keep going over the presentation that we had and the numbers that keep coming up, and even on Tuesday, when we heard we had to pass a special warrant article relating to special education because of the out-of-district costs of $8.2 million. As I said in our meeting with the Essex Tech, there's an admission disparity, and this town represents 9% of the population of the communities that support the Essex Tech. I would ask for two things. One is the narrative in the Article 4 does discuss a net increase of 14 students. That's 18.02% of the entire population. I'd like to represent that 14 out of the incoming 51 represents a 27% increase. Danvers is shouldering 27% of the incoming students. So I'm asking that we consider a reduction of, so if it was only 9%, it would be 5 students. If it was the 14 that are coming in, that's 27%. I'd like to go in the middle. Certainly, I'd like Danvers to have benefit. And I'd like to recommend that we should fund 8 incoming students. Based on the math I did, and it can be corrected by the town manager and his staff, the per pupil cost is $23,215. I would recommend that we fund 8 students, not 15. So we fund 16% of the incoming class, not 27, and far above our 9, and reduce the funding by $139,290, which is the delta between 14 and 8. So, I'd like to suggest I'd like to make a motion to reduce the, and I need to go through you, Mr. Chairman, to ask the town manager if we have that opportunity. I'd like to reduce the amount to $4,078,202 from $4.2 million.
So
The motion is to reduce by $139,000.
And I'm not going to let that go through.
Okay.
We already voted on it. I would urge you to make your motion at FinCom.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Any other business? Any comments? Maureen, comments before we go home?
Yeah, I just want to say that, just with all the spam going through, the email, that's great. If the town manager could look in that, Colby's going to look into that. Emily Beatrice puts out a newsletter. I just want to say what a great job she really did. I liked it. I liked the format. It was nice. I had a question with regards to, maybe this is for the meeting, though, too, is with regards to the Maple Square units, with it being reduced from 147 to 145 now, why do we even, they're saying that the affordable housing unit has to go from 30 to 29. Why can't we just say we want to keep the affordable housing at 30? Gardner? I know it's a formula, but,
Can
or Mr.
Yeah,
Chairman?
please.
Yeah.
So it is formulaic.
Yeah.
The language of the zoning allows for 20%, and they do not have to give us more if they do not want to. We did ask and petition them to keep the current number for economic reasons, and they had to reduce it based on the fact that when they got in there and designed things, they understood that they needed more storage space and other things, so they've dropped their number from 147 to 145. 20% of that gets us to the number of affordable housing. They meet the zoning bylaw, and we can't force them to do any more.
Just trying to see if we could squeeze them into keeping that one more extra unit.
No, but in the long run, it does not affect our position on the SHI inventory. We're still above 10%. That didn't change that number at all. It's a loss of an opportunity for one unit, but we believe with upcoming projects, we'll more than reclaim those amounts.
Okay, just wanted to ask. Thank you.
Okay. David, any comments? Comments before we leave?
Thank you, Dan, no?
Matt?
No.
Gardner?
I'm all set.
So, folks, last night was Passover. I want to recognize that. And Sunday is Easter, so happy Easter. And please remember the vets when you see them, and good night, Danvers.
Thank you.